today's video, I will rebuild Crystal Palace, but with a little twist of the fact that I can only sign players from the EFL. Palace have a rich history of signing players from the lower leagues of England like Michael Olise, Eberiche Eze, and most recently Adam Wharton, meaning every single player that I sign in this video today will be playing in the Championship or below. So we will take the manager's seat at Selhurst Park with a goal of securing a Premier League title. Diving into the club, we all know about the talent Crystal Palace have at the club already. We are using a real-world game mode with no data updates, so I still have the likes of Michael Olise at the club. However, we will have to wait until February to see Adam Wharton arrive from Blackburn, just like he did in real life. With that being said, we will be throwing the boys into this 4-3-3 tactic to let Eze and Olise cook. We've just got the 3 competitions on our schedule this season, so I want to be punching well above where the media are expecting us to be this year. We opened our campaign with a couple of mixed results, but showed what we could do in game week 4 as we beat Manchester City at home thanks to a late Edouard penalty. Looking at the rest of our fixtures to close out 2023, you can kind of see the level that we're at, but we did lose games against the likes of Liverpool, Arsenal and Newcastle. Once he'd arrived in the winter window, Adam Wharton came straight into the team and will be pinned into the defensive midfield position for the rest of this video to ensure his development. Of all of our attacking players that we have at our disposal, it was a defender who really stood out, as Tyreek Mitchell had an outstanding season, racking up 43 appearances and 12 assists in all competitions from left back. However, he does now want to leave the club and Al Nassr are after his services. As we move into 2024, our form remains solid, even picking up victories against the likes of Manchester United, West Ham and Aston Villa. This was an outstanding season for us, and we even managed to snag a 5th place finish in the Premier League table, meaning we will be playing in the Champions League next season. We are off to Europe, boys. However, in the domestic cup competitions, we had pretty contrasting fortunes. We did well in one, and we did pretty badly in the other. In the FA Cup, we did get bounced in the 3rd round by Spurs thanks to losing a replay at Selhurst Park. But in the EFL Cup, we worked our way through the earlier rounds to a 2-legged semi-final against Chelsea. We had the first leg at home, but it was Chelsea who took the lead on the night through who else but Cole Palmer. On the half-hour mark, we did pull ourselves level through Eze, but in the 93rd minute, Chelsea stole one as Raheem Sterling made it 2-1. That meant that we had an uphill task in the second leg at Stamford Bridge, but this time it was us who got off to the hot start as Jefferson Lerma gave us a 4th minute lead. Then just a few minutes later, we pulled ahead on aggregate thanks to Michael Olise. However, Chelsea were not to be denied as Sterling scored his 2nd goal of the tie, but it was us who had the last laugh as Edouard fired us into the final in the 76th minute. We had to face Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool in the final, and they got off to a great start in this one, bagging a goal in the 6th minute. Edouard fired us level in the second half from the penalty spot, but Liverpool's superior squad and substitutes made the difference as Cody Gakpo found the breakthrough in the 84th minute to see Liverpool lift the trophy. But this was still a huge season for us, and Palace will be in the Champions League next season. However, now we have to get to work improving this team using players exclusively from the EFL, and we have just shy of £50 million to get it done. And if you are enjoying this rebuild, please don't forget to drop a like on the video. It massively helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Leave a comment as well whilst you're down there, and if you are new around here, consider hitting that subscribe button. We put out rebuild videos every single week on Football Manager. This, I have to tell you, this summer window was absolutely crazy because our squad got absolutely decimated by Saudi clubs. We lost Eberiche Eze to Al Ahly for a whopping 50 million, followed by Tyreek Mitchell and Chris Richards to Al Ittihad for a combined 77 million pounds. Joachim Andersen then joined Al Hilal for another 45 million pounds, and finally Usman Edouard joined Al Nassr for 30 million pounds. So thanks to Saudi Arabia, I had an additional 202 million pounds in my pocket, but I was 5 starters worse off. And my first port of call was raiding those teams that got relegated from the Premier League last season. First on the hit list was Wolves, as we signed Matheus Cunha Cunha, Fabio Silva and Pedro Neto for a combined £109.5 million. Next, it was Burnley as we signed Aaron Ramsey and Sander Berge to bolster our midfield options for £41.5 million. Then I raided Leeds United after they failed to get promoted last season to sign Archie Gray, who will go back on loan to them for the year, and Wilfred Gnonto for a combined £74 million. And to help round out the squad, we signed players like Max Lowe from Sheffield United, Leif Davis from Ipswich, and Daniel Ballard from Sunderland. This window actually saw us add 15 players to the squad, and this is our best lineup going into the first game of the season. But we do have Mark Gahey, who wants to leave the club for one with a stronger squad. Cheers, Mark. This season we add the Champions League to the schedule, so it's gonna be a busy one, but it's gonna be a good one for our bank balance. This year I wanted to build on last season's 5th place finish, but we had a slow start to the league season as our new players settled into the club. But after the first couple of months we really hit our stride and started to pick up wins against the likes of Manchester United and Manchester City. We had a couple of standout players from the summer signings, including Matheus Cunha, who racked up 28 goals and 6 assists this year in all competitions, and he is now developing interest from clubs all around the world. Former Ipswich fullback Leif Davis also killed it this season, providing us with 18 assists in all comps, and he has adjusted to life in the Premier League very well. The second half of the season for us was pretty solid, even completing the league double over Manchester City with a dominant performance at Selhurst Park. But sadly we couldn't improve on that 5th place finish last year, but we did sneak into 5th again to secure Champions League football for a 2nd season in a row. And speaking of the Champions League, we had a good start to our European campaign, even winning 6 of our league phase games against the likes of Dortmund and Ajax. Those results saw us secure a top 8 finish in the table and move straight into the round of 16. Here we had to take on Italian opposition as we were drawn alongside Juventus. We had to travel to Turin for the first leg, and to my surprise we dominated this one from start to finish and racked up the goals through Cunha, Will Hughes and Gnonto. And things didn't get much better for the old lady at Selhurst Park as Pedro Neto put the icing on the cake to see us advance into the quarter-final. It was a familiar opposition here as we were drawn alongside Liverpool. This time we were at home in the first leg and we were on the back foot in this one after Daniel Munoz was shown a 2nd yellow card in the second half. After that, Liverpool ran rampant, scoring 3 goals without reply to give us an uphill task at Anfield. In the second leg, we gave the game a real good go, but shared a 2-2 draw at Anfield with Gnonto and Will Hughes getting our goals. But I will definitely take a quarter-final appearance in our first year. In the domestic cup competitions, we made a return to Wembley in the EFL Cup as we made it back-to-back final appearances for a 2nd season in a row, this time beating Aston Villa in the semi-finals. This year we had to face Spurs in the final, and it was a cagey game until the final 30 minutes as Cameron Archer broke the deadlock. But then less than 10 minutes later, Spurs were level as Eric Garcia rifled the ball into the back of the net from just outside the area. However, this season, it was us who would have that last laugh. With 10 minutes of the 90 to go, Matheus Cunha leapt highest to guide home a Leif Davis cross to put us back into the lead. And that was enough to see us secure our first trophy of the save. And unlike last season, we had a great run in the FA Cup as well, making it through the first few rounds, beating the likes of Cardiff, Stoke and Brentford to set up a quarter-final tie with Liverpool. Liverpool seemed to be a bit of a bogey team for us as our record is pretty poor against them, but this time we got the opener in the 11th minute through Michael Olise. Then, with 15 minutes of the game to go, Liverpool pulled level through Dominic Szoboszlai. That goal forced the game into extra time where Matheus Cunha popped up with yet another big moment goal, this time nipping ahead of his marker to guide home a low cross at the near post. His goal meant we had another trip to Wembley this season to take on Manchester United at the semi-final stage. We looked impressive on the big stage, twice taking the lead through Pedro Neto, but United were able to equalise through Diogo Dalot and Marcus Rashford. Extra time couldn't separate us, so we went to penalties where Mateta and Guehi saw their penalties saved to see United advance to the final. But we had another outstanding year to secure our first trophy, a top 5 finish in the Premier League, along with a Champions League quarter-final. Over the summer we have just shy of £60 million to spend in raiding the EFL, so let's get to work. This This summer in the transfer market, it was a little bit more reserved as Saudi Arabia didn't completely gut our squad, but we did lose one of our best players. Mark Gahey swapped the red and blue of Palace for the white of Tottenham as he joined Spurs for an initial £88 million that will most likely rise to £112 million. So I spent pretty big to replace him, and seeing as Everton got relegated last season, I signed 6'5" Jarrad Branthwaite to be our new rock at the back. He only cost us £37.5 million, so I had some extra cash left, so I signed Bellingham. No, not Jude. I spent just over £18 million to bring in Joe Bellingham from Sunderland to be a great squad option whilst he continues his development. So those two come into the squad, with Branthwaite making it into our best 11. And to continue the development of some of our young talents, I will be pinning Adam Wharton and Archie Gray into these positions for the season. And for those of you wondering how I do this when simulating, you click on my profile, go on holiday, and make sure you tick the 2 boxes within the tactics and team selection, and you're ready to go. We're back in the same 4 competitions this year, and I will be out to retain the EFL Cup, especially after winning it last season. We do have our best odds of winning the Premier League in season number 3 at 100 to 1, but this Premier League is looking very different now. We have to kick off our Season 3 review by talking about our performance in the domestic cups, because unfortunately, it was our worst performances so far. After winning the EFL Cup last season, we limped through our 3rd round tie with Brentford via penalties, and then suffered a 2-1 defeat at the hands of Manchester United at Selhurst Park in the 4th round. And things didn't go much better for us in the FA Cup as we smashed Bolton in the 3rd round, and then Brentford got their own back on us in the 4th, putting 5 past us in a 5-2 defeat. We did fare much better in the Premier League, however, as we got off to a red-hot start, winning our first 4 games on the spin. But things weren't really clicking for us in the Premier League this season. We weren't really firing on all cylinders, despite being very difficult to beat, especially as we only lost 4 games in the first half of the season. Key man for us this year was Wilfried Gnonto, who had a real breakout season, scoring 26 goals in 50 appearances in all competitions. However, that second half of the season saw us really come into our own and turn some of those draws into 3 points, which saw us fly up the table. Well, I say fly. We are still off the pace in terms of winning the league, but we did achieve our highest finish so far by finishing 4th with 74 points. That means we'd have Champions League football for yet another year, and this season we had another great showing in the competition, dominating teams in the league phase to finish 7th in the table with 16 points. So we marched into the round of 16 where we were drawn alongside Danish champions FC Copenhagen. We had to travel for the first leg, and despite dominating the game, we were handed a 1-0 defeat thanks to Jordan Larsson's first half goal. However, back at Selhurst Park, we were at our clinical best as we scored 3 goals without reply to book our spot in the quarter-finals. It was German opposition at that stage this season as we had to face RB Leipzig. We were on the road for the first leg, and Leipzig hit us cold from the off, bagging 2 goals inside the first 10 minutes. Gnonto did pull a goal back for us in the second half, but I knew the second leg was still going to be a very tough task. And that was a task that we weren't up to, as the game ended 0-0 to see us exit the competition. Whilst this was a trophyless season, I'm still seeing the progress, and I really like the team that we have here. We're feeling the pinch financially this season as we only have £16 million in the transfer kitty, so I'm expecting a pretty slow summer. Well, I was expecting a slow summer, and I didn't get it. Firstly, we saw Liverpool pull the trigger to sign Wilfried Gnonto for £56 million before Matheus Cunha was purchased by Newcastle for £52 million. The outgoings didn't stop there, as another 6 players left the club in this window for another £51 million. So yet again, we had to rebuild the entire squad from the Championship or below. Key targets here were Nottingham Forest, who were about to get promoted from the Championship after winning the playoffs. So they were still technically a Championship side when I signed Franco Gonzalez, Anthony Elanga and Taiwo Iwanyi for a combined £108.5 million. Next on the hit list was Leeds United, who are still in the Championship in this universe, as we signed Charlie Cresswell for £9 million and followed it up with Ilian Meslier for £29 million. Meaning this is how the team is shaping up for this season, but we will be keeping Wharton and Gray in their positions for yet another year, as they are both starting to turn into real ballers for the team. It's the same 4 competitions on the schedule this season, but we finally slashed our title odds to 50-1. But I'm expecting some turnover this season, as Manchester City, Liverpool and Arsenal all have new gaffers going into the year. Much like last season, we couldn't achieve our domestic cup form from season number 2, as we were bounced in the 3rd round of the EFL Cup by Championship side Blackburn Rovers. And we weren't much better in the FA Cup, as we lost in the quarter-finals to another Championship side in Norwich. However, this season we collected some of the most impressive results in the Champions League, as we beat the likes of Dortmund, Marseille and even PSG in the league phase. We narrowly missed out on a top 8 finish in the table by a single point, meaning we'd have to face a playoff fixture where we would take on Real Sociedad. We had to travel to Spain for the first leg and were really on form in this one, scoring 3 unanswered goals with Iwanyi, Wharton and Bellingham all getting on the score sheet. Back at Selhurst Park, we added 2 more goals for good measure before Sociedad scored nothing more than 2 consolation goals for themselves in the second half. That meant we advanced with a 5-2 aggregate win into the round of 16, where we would take on Juventus for a second time in 3 seasons. They didn't prove a stern test 2 years ago, and that was the case again here, as we hammered them in the first leg at home, winning the game 5-1 on the night. The game in Turin was closer, but Taiwo Awoniyi scored the only goal of the game to send us into the quarter-finals. And this is where we had to take on a juggernaut of European football in Real Madrid. This round, we had the first leg at home and Madrid scored a goal either side of half-time, with Rodrigo scoring both of them. But our boys wouldn't be deterred, as goals from Archie Gray and Franco Gonzalez made it 2-2 on the night. However, at the Bernabeu, things went exactly as you'd expect. Madrid scored goals through Vinicius Jr., Arda Güler and Endrick to see us exit the competition at the quarter-final stage for a 3rd season in a row. And whilst the Champions League quarter-finals is feeling like our ceiling here, the same couldn't be said for the Premier League. We even had our best start to the league, winning 10 of our first 12 games, picking up 3 points against the likes of Arsenal, Aston Villa and Newcastle. This year was a real coming-of-age season for Michael Olise, who went off in all capacities, scoring an outstanding 44 goals and providing 14 assists in the process. So that makes it 58 goal involvements in 54 games. It's not bad for a winger at all, is it? We used that start to the season as a real springboard going into the second half, where we only suffered 1 defeat against Arsenal. But even with this form, we had to avoid defeat against Manchester City on the final day of the season to make sure Spurs didn't win the title. Luckily for us, City were nowhere near what they'd expect, as we thumped them 6-1 at Selhurst Park on the final day of the season to be crowned Premier League champions in front of our home fans. We racked up an outstanding 90 points this season to secure the club's first ever top flight title in England. And I'm going to have 1 more season to see if I can break that glass ceiling of the Champions League quarter-finals and to see if we can retain the Premier League. And we have around £25 million to make this happen, but we have several members of the squad that are wanted. By our recent standards, this window was incredibly tame, as no one left the club. But I did steal 2 players from recently relegated Brentford, as we signed Ivan Toney for £22.5 million and Mads Rorslev for £9.75 million. Toney comes straight into our best 11 to lead the line and is a massive improvement for us in that area. But I really like this team still, with an English core of 7 players in our best 11. This season sees us add the Community Shield to the schedule as Premier League champions, but the goal is to retain the league title and then go further in the Champions League than we ever have before. If you are still watching the video at this point, I just want to say thank you so much for getting to this stage of the video, but I want you to let me know that you are still here down in the comments by commenting the word Eagle. down below. Just say the word Eagle and that allows me to know that you were here going into the Season 5 results. We opened up Season 5 with the Community Shield and we were in charge all game and bagged a goal in each half, with Pedro Neto and Michael Olise getting on the score sheet. Max Aarons did add a goal for Bournemouth in the 81st minute, but we were able to hold off any further pressure to lift the first available trophy of the season. The next trophy on the agenda was the EFL Cup, and we made great progress in this competition, dispatching 2 other London clubs on our way to a third final in 5 seasons. It was Newcastle United this time in the final, and the goals were flying in for both sides in this one, but several of our key players had a bad day at the office, as Newcastle came out on top on the day, with our former player Mateus Cunha scoring the all-important goal. We also had a great showing in the FA Cup, taking out lower league opposition on our way to a Wembley semi-final with Liverpool. Pedro Neto got us off to a great start in this one inside the first 12 minutes, but Liverpool were level just before half-time, with Kefren Turam getting on the score sheet. But sadly for us, in the second half, Luis Diaz powered into our penalty area and lashed the ball beyond Hermansen to send Liverpool into the final and send us home empty-handed. So it was a double miss in the domestic cups, but could we retain the Premier League? Well, we had a pretty patchy start to the season compared to last year, with those silly draws creeping back in. Ivan Toney did have a banger of a season, scoring 44 goals in 55 appearances in all competitions, including 29 in the Prem, which saw him win the Premier League Golden Boot. But he's now wanted by Saudi Arabia, so I guess we know how that goes. We were a lot more clinical in the second half of the year as we moved into 2028, but despite the run of 9 wins in a row to close out the season, we still couldn't catch eventual champions Arsenal. The Gunners topped the table with 93 points, with us just 5 points behind them. But that does mean Champions League football moving forward, which is allowing us to fund a stadium expansion. In the Champions League this season, we had our best showing in the league phase, but the fixture computer had something to say about it, as we had some slightly easier fixtures. We finished up the league phase in 6th to secure safe pathway into the round of 16, where we came up against Dortmund. We had to travel to Germany for the first leg, but had an easier time of it than I was expecting, as we rattled home 3 goals without response to give us a nice lead to take back to Selhurst Park. And whilst the home leg wasn't as convincing, we still won 1-0 on the night, with the goal coming again from Michael Olise. As we moved into the quarterfinals, yet again we had to face Liverpool at this stage for a second time in 4 seasons. We were at home in the first leg, and this time Darwin Núñez gave Liverpool the lead on the stroke of half-time. In the second half, we fought our way back into the game with goals from Pedro Neto and Anthony Elanga, but at the death, Van Dijk made it 2-2, heading home from a corner. The second leg was at Anfield, and we were quickly ahead again on aggregate through Mads Rorslev as he cut in from the right-hand side and fired the ball into the roof of the net. However, that was the highlight of the game for us, as Liverpool came back into it with goals from Núñez, Diaz and Gomez to win 3-1 on the night and move into the semi-finals. So we still couldn't break through that quarter-final ceiling, but we've improved this club to a level where they are regulars in the competition, all while signing players exclusively from the EFL. And if you want to continue the save with Crystal Palace, you can do right now. The save files are posted every single week over on my Patreon, and you can go over there, subscribe to that, while supporting me as a creator. We've improved Palace massively here, all while signing players from the EFL. We've improved their facilities, they're getting a stadium expansion, and they're regulars in the Champions League, so this is a very, very good one. If you do want to see some other rebuild content, check out the video that's popping up right now. This is how I won the Champions League with Fenerbahce, and it was an absolute banger of a video.